Here's another quick and interesting way to deal with gradients. It comes from yesteryear, in a time before we had more refined tools. And I think this method is practically forgotten, but it can be handy in the right circumstances. And I like this method because for myself and my workflow, what I like to do is do my early processing in PixInsight. In PixInsight, I will typically start off by running Blur Exterminator, Noise Exterminator, and Star Exterminator to remove the stars. Then setting aside that deconvolved star plate, backing up all the exterminators, and then editing the image without the stars that has my subject of interest on it. When it comes to things like addressing backgrounds and removing gradients, I very much prefer to do that in the non-destructive space of a layer-based editor like Affinity Photo. So I like this method because it allows me to do just that. Here, I've once again taken my famous, or perhaps infamous, picture of the Bodes and Cigars galaxies with the terrible gradient going from lower left to upper right, red on the left and green on the right. I've already processed it as far as I'm going to go with it in PixInsight, having run the exterminators and done all the histogram and curve transformations that I intended to do on it. So going forward, it's just layer-based editing from here. So now I want to address that gradient next. And the key to doing this is, strangely enough, a dust removing tool. So the bottom layer is the lock layer. That's my proof layer. That's just in case I make a mistake or I want to access the unchanged information from the original layer of the photo. That's part of non-destructive editing strategy. The next layer up is the layer I'm going to work with. They're both just labeled background. Then I'm going to duplicate the background layer again, and I'm going to name it correction. This is the layer that is going to help us remove the gradient. And we're not even going to need a tool like DBE to do this, and yet we are going to get a custom-tailored background removal model. Now in the correction layer, I'm going to open the inpainting brush and remove the galaxies. It's only going to take a moment. I know that sounds weird, right? Remove the galaxies? But they are the brightest, biggest objects in this image. We're going to take them out of there so that the next step will make a nice, smooth, even correction plate, or counterplate, if you will, to help us remove the gradient in the layer below. As soon as the last galaxy is removed, we're going to make sure that we're still working on the correction layer, then go up to the filter menu top left and down to the noise submenu and select the dust and scratches tool. When the tool opens, we're going to make sure that we have the radius cranked all the way up and the tolerance cranked all the way down. And now you can see that we get this very good, very accurate correction plate, not that much unlike a background model like we might see out of DBE, for example. It portrays the red side of the gradient on the left, the green side of the gradient on the right, and is lighter up top where there's more dark space. Now, still working on the correction plates, we're just going to select the subtraction composite option. This will tell the layer above our correction plate to deduct its hue and luminance values from the plate below, which is our background layer. And you can see instantly that the background is killed. It's too heavy though, so we're going to drag a brightness contrast tool into the correction layer and crank the contrast all the way down. Now the effect of this is very much like what we would get out of the background model from a tool like dynamic background extraction. Now YouTube might not show it, but the space looks a little blotchy, and I don't like blotchy looking space. So what I'm going to do is create another black reflection layer, and then I'm going to tone down its effect on the image. On the opacity slider, I'll dial it down to, I think, about 54%. Now I've added a curves tool to the background layer, and I'm going to use the curves tool to darken and smooth out that blotchy space just a little bit, but increase the luminance of the galaxies as well. I want to capture as much as possible of the luminance around the Cigar Galaxy, as well as the arms of the Bodes Galaxy, as well as its various lovely nebulae. And that's it. This image is done. Couldn't be simpler. I wish I'd thought of this sooner. Of course, there was the fair bit of preparation in PixInsight, running the exterminators to prepare a good star plate, then going back and denoising and sharpening up the image of the galaxies. But once in Affinity Photo, the whole process went amazingly quickly. I might run an unsharp mask over the background to just sharpen up a little bit of the detail in the galaxies. And then I might run a partially masked over curves tool on the red channel to bring out the red of the nebulae within Bodes Galaxy and the erupting nebulous material in the Cigar Galaxy. But apart from that, this image is done in less than 5 minutes on Affinity Photo. As always, thank you for watching and your interest in my somewhat unusual developing techniques, and hopefully you can find some way to take these unusual techniques and make them useful for you. You never know when any of these ideas are going to come in handy. All right, now get out there and shoot the sky.